influence promoted by imperialism. Get access to the analysis of the socio-economic and political life of the whole South America on our screen and platform in English. A critical place committed to the truth to determine the major events that transform the world today. Mondays. Only on TeleSUR. Follow the most important global events through a comprehensive perspective. With a team of journalists in 25 locations around the world to convey our people's reality. From the South. Weekdays. Only on TeleSUR.
Who's moving the chessmen? What interests and motivate the actors behind each event? The board is deployed there. Critical Move investigates every event from Monday to Friday. Only on TeleSUR.
The Pakistani journalist Tariq Ali examines the mass media influence promoted by imperialism. Get access to the analysis of the socio-economic and political life of the whole South America on our screen and platform in English. A critical place committed to the truth to determine the major events that transform the world today. Mondays. Only on TeleSUR.
Innovation, science, the technological breakthrough and its influence in society.
Viajeros del saber, el futuro está aquí.
Atomy. Monday, only on TeleSUR.
In a world infested by inequalities, abuse of power, and injustice, the American journalist Abby Martin covers the struggle for fundamental rights worldwide, deepening into the search of files which uncover the empire's strategies through our screen and web platform in English. The Empire Files with Abby Martin. Tuesday, only on TeleSUR.
The life is full of moments. Moments of fight. Moments of hope. Moments that transcend. Moments that you can live in. TeleSUR documentaries. Sundays. Only on TeleSUR.
为了保持身体健康，我冥想。
Para mantenerme saludable, yo corro.
To keep myself healthy, I study.
Για να διατηρηθώ υγιής, τρέφομαι σωστά.
Para mantenerme saludable, yo bailo.
Para mantenerme saludable, yo purifico mi espíritu a través del cuerpo. ¿Y tú?
Guide your body. Tuesdays, only on TeleSUR.
Follow our latest updates concerning the novel coronavirus by checking our special content in our website, where you will be able to get the most reliable details and numbers for each continent, available from your mobile device or desktop. TeleSUR, connecting the Global South.
Today we're going to engage in a little discussion regarding the situation in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Join us on The Global African. The Democratic Republic of the Congo has been in crisis for most of its existence. In the 1800s, when it was the personal property of Belgium's King Leopold, it was the site of what can only be described as a Holocaust, in which more than 10 million Congolese lost their lives to further the avarice of King Leopold and his allies in Belgium. In 1960, as a result of an independence movement, Belgium released the Congo and granted it independence, but it did it in such a way as to promote destabilization. Almost immediately, despite the great efforts of the Congo's first leader, Patrice Lumumba, the Congo disintegrated, nearly disintegrated, and fell into civil wars as secessionist movements unfolded, promoted by various interests, particularly in Europe and in South Africa. This led ultimately to the murder of Patrice Lumumba and the rise of an individual with whom is associated a term called kleptocrat. That is, we're talking about Mobutu. The Mobutu regime was known as a kleptocracy. It was a regime in which the wealth of the country became the wealth of Mobutu and his family and allies, robbing one of the richest countries on the continent, rich in minerals and resources, and taking that and placing it overseas, particularly in banks in Europe and the United States. In 1997, an insurrection develops against Mobutu. It's important to understand that insurrection happens 6 years after the end of the Cold War, because during the Cold War, despite the fact that Mobutu was nothing more than a thief, he was our thief. That is, he was a thief on the payroll of the United States, collaborating with the United States in any way that the United States asked, sending troops into other countries, intervening, trying to affect the outcome of the Angolan Civil War. But with the end of the Cold War, Mobutu had essentially lost his usefulness, or at least so it seemed at the time. And there was an insurrection that brought forward his defeat, an insurrection that was supported by Uganda and Rwanda. And as a result, Laurent Kabila emerged as the president. But that quickly disintegrated into a civil war in which various forces within the Democratic Republic of the Congo found themselves engaged in what ultimately became known as Africa's First World War. It was called Africa's First World War because in addition to the various forces that were engaged within the Congo, the pro-Kabila forces and anti-Kabila, there were also external forces. Uganda and Rwanda took one side against Kabila. Zimbabwe, Angola, and some other countries took the side of the Kabila government and plunged the country into a war in which millions of people have died as a result of either direct conflict, murder, disease, or other results of war. Every so often we hear something about Rwanda and its involvement in the eastern part of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Joining us to have this discussion is Kambale Musevuli, who is the spokesperson for the Friends of the Congo, an international organization with representatives in more than 60 countries, that is a humanitarian human rights organization fighting to address the issues and challenges of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Africa's First World War. Do you believe that that's an apt description?
Well, it catches the attention of the people. And for that war, I always mention that there is a conflict in the Congo because of U.S. allies Rwanda and Uganda. So I always put the connection with the United States because on one hand, we would think about these Africans, thugs and warlords fighting each other, but we never look at who provides the weapon, who provides the political, diplomatic backing, what are the companies actually looting the Congo. So I framed it in a way where, yes, we have a conflict there, but we have a bigger hand in Washington and in London that's moving parts within my country.
Well, let's talk about that. The overthrow of Mobutu was a great development for the continent, but within a year, I think it was roughly, the country was thrown into a civil war?
Mainly because the movement didn't come from the people. So for one aspect you have to look at it is from 1990 to 1997, there were democratic forces within the Congo fighting the Mobutu regime to remove him democratically. That's not what got the world support. The US supported a military solution to a political problem by using its allies, Rwanda and Uganda, to support a military insurrection to destabilize the Congo. It was presented as Congolese coming to liberate the Congolese people. That's why it didn't last for a year. Right after a year was over, they started fighting each other around access to resources. On one end, the Kabila regime asked Rwanda and Uganda soldiers who came to help with the rebellion to leave. They did not want to leave. Within weeks of them being actually asked to leave the country, they started a new rebellion. And it's been a cycle where some parts where you see Rwanda and Uganda soldiers having boots on the ground, and in other instances you see them supporting proxy rebel militias. So when one wants to analyze the Congo, you hear names of so many different militia groups. You start thinking about this is a mess. You have all these groups, who is doing what there. But at the end, think about it as the example I use, Blackwater. Blackwater doesn't exist anymore. It's called XZ. They changed the name so people will not know who they are. It's the same thing with the rebel groups on the ground, where in 1997 rebellion, they were called AFDL. Then in the 1998 rebellion, they became RCD. Mm-hmm. After signing peace accord in 2002, they take the rebels, integrate them in the Congolese military. A few years later, they leave the Congolese military. They are called CNDP. And then the latest rebel uprising that took place in 2012, those same rebels call themselves M23. So if you haven't not been following this war throughout the past 16 years, you will be confused about who is who. But it's really to cover for the hands, one, of Congo's neighbors, and secondly, what's very important to know, Rwanda and Uganda will not be able to do this without U.S. support. Why? Their militaries are trained by the United States. They are funding, in the case of Rwanda, 40% of its annual budget comes from international donors. You see the soldiers being trained at Fort Bragg, Fort Leavenworth. Actually, Kagame's son was at, Kagame is the president of Rwanda. His son was at West Point, for example. And then you have Ugandan troops in Iraq, in Afghanistan, and doing U.S. military operations, U.S. interest, like in Darfur, you have Rwanda. In Mali, you have Rwandan soldiers. In Haiti, you have Rwandan soldiers. So given they are allies, they're allowed to do those things there. So I always want to emphasize that while I know that Rwanda and Uganda have been the stabilizing force in the eastern part of the country, they cannot do it without the United States and United Kingdom support.
I want to get back to this issue of the United States in a second, but just the rebellion against Kabila. You're arguing that that was simply an external phenomena, that there was not, because the information that I've seen is that there was a domestic formation that carries out the rebellion with the support of Rwanda and Uganda, and that when Rwanda and Uganda split, had a falling out, that was then got translated into the Congo in terms of splits within the rebel forces.
And I think you are speaking more so of the 1998 war. After the 1998 war started, there was a split between that. And I also want to point out, because many people don't realize that the rebellion of Kabila, him taking power, stopped the democratic process in the Congo. If you even think about it logically, President Mobutu died in 1997. So it was very obvious that he will not be in power for so long, he's going to die. But during that time, from 1990 to 1997, there were democratic forces, non-violent democratic forces within the country fighting to take over that country. But having a military, it pretty much stopped it. In 1998, the biggest issue, according to Kabila himself, was that when Rwandan and Ugandan soldiers came and supported the military force. They did not want to leave, and they went to the mines. They started exploiting the minerals and exploiting some of the people in certain areas. And also they committed something that the United Nations calls genocide on Congolese soil, specifically in a refugee camp called Tingi Tingi, where they went to the camp and indiscriminately killed women, children, and elderly in that camp. So, given Rwanda and Uganda refused to leave, he actually got the support of the locals to let them know these people who came, they are not Congolese, they have to leave the country. And then the uprising started. With the uprising, people picked sides. SADC nations, like Zimbabwe, Angola, South Africa.
SADC is the Southern African Development Community.
Yes, and they joined the Kabila forces. Then Rwanda and Uganda were a bloc, and which, because of greed, it became obvious why they were there. Because they fought each other over a diamond mine. And actually they did something very historic. I don't think this has ever happened in the history of the world, where two nations who are allies go to another country and fight each other over a diamond mine. They fought each other in Kisangani in 2000 and caused the death of 1,000 Congolese people. And the victims who did not die are still there demanding justice. That you saw Rwanda bombing Ugandans, Ugandans bombing Rwandans, and Congolese stuck in the middle there. And no accountability for that. And it has been what has happened since 1997. There has been a culture of impunity and no accountability for the crimes that the death toll has reached over 6 million people. We still do not see justice for the Congolese people for these crimes taking place.
We'll be back in a moment with the Global African. I'm your host, Bill Fletcher. So let's tie this into the United States. What is the role currently of the United States in the DRC? I know that before he was elected president, Barack Obama, as senator, introduced some legislation to address a potential role for the United States in at least trying to help resolve the situation in the Great Lakes region of Africa. Leaving aside whether that was sincere or not, what's the current role?
The U.S. role has not changed. Unfortunately, no matter if we have a Democrat or a Republican, their Africa policy stays the same. As a senator, the law that he passed was to pressure George Bush. He was on a partisan type of way where he could have points